Welcome back to Damn Parenting. I'm your host, Eva, and I'm so glad you're joining me for this one. We're actually going to be talking about something that doesn't get nearly enough airtime, especially for families like ours living abroad. Interdependence versus independence. Now, I know it sounds a bit academic, but stay with me because this one is going to hit really close to home for all of us. So here's a quick breakdown for those of us juggling the toddlers, the time zones, and the cultural curveballs. We all know independence, right? It's that I've got this energy. You make your own decisions. You figure things out solo. You're surviving a new country with the grit and Google Translate. Interdependence, though, is the we got this energy. When you and your partner share the load, you support each other, and you move through chaos as a team. So think about it this way. Living abroad makes the balance between those two even tougher. You might be parenting without your village, navigating work in a new language, or managing life with a partner who grew up in a totally different culture. It's beautiful, but it can also be really hard. That's exactly why I'm thrilled to welcome back Angela from the Expat Parenting Collective. We're diving deep into how international families can build that balance, dividing responsibilities fairly, lightening the mental load, and creating a partnership where both parents feel supported, seen, and heard. So whether you're out on a stroller walk or cycling to work or folding yet another load of laundry, this one is for you. For every parent building a home away from home, this is your reminder that you don't have to do this alone. So grab a coffee, take a breath, and let's get into this. Welcome back, Angela.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
This might be layering on to our previous episode because it's quite, again, specific about supporting the partnerships here in our mixed cultures and our international families. So for many of the international families, living abroad amplifies the challenge of balancing interdependence and independence. How would you define these two approaches in parenting and partnership? And also, why is it so important to get the balance right?
Yeah. Let's start with independence. Independence is when two people, a couple, a partnership, they're living their lives as parallel tracks. They go about their lives with their commitments, their career, everything in parallel. And often when kids come along, this often results in trade-offs or wins and losses. And then that's the discovery of maybe a more interdependent life. So interdependence are when couples intentionally prioritize what works best for them in that moment or phase of their life through collaboration, respect, and keeping in mind the needs, the values, the fears, the boundaries, and the dreams of both partners. They create a shared path together. And I'd like to think of it as like the tango of life, because you're leaned in, you're connected, and you're heart to heart to what matters. Why is this important? Because when you're both prioritizing what is most important to you, then you're working together to make your family unit, the family system, work. And you're depending upon each other, collaborating with each other to make it work. So I think it's very important, especially for the life that we live as immigrants, economic migrants, and expats.
So leading on from our previous episode where we were talking about communication and connectiveness with our partners, how is it that communication supports independence and interdependence?
Oh, that's a great question. If you are forging an interdependent path, you need to collaborate and communicate to have all the responsibilities addressed. This is leadership in couples. So if you think about yourself as two co-leaders, there are some things that need to be discussed to make sure that everything is taken care of. And that's careers, parenting, and many people say sharing the load, but I'm going to say sharing the commitments. So careers, whose career takes priority? In this case, both have careers, but one person's career is more demanding. And so that person may take the primary kind of position and the other the secondary. Maybe both of them decide to take primary in their career and then realize that they have to divide the balancing of the commitments even more so between the two of them. So having an intentional conversation about what you see of your career for the next 5 years to look at truly what is most important for the career prioritization. Next, parenting. Who's going to take the lead there? Or are you guys going to co-parent? Will you and your partner co-parent? Now, the careers and the parenting often kind of go line in line. You know, if one person is taking primary for the career and the other person's taking secondary, often the person's taking secondary is going to be the person who's the lead parent. But in this, many people ask what's best. And my answer to that would be whatever supports both of you to have a successful and satisfying relationship. Maybe that may be that you take the secondary position in your career because you really want to be present 100% in the raising of your kids. But what's really important here, once again, this needs to be intentional. You need to have these conversations because there are many couples when they're about to have a child, there's assumptions that are made because they think that the other person is on the same page. Maybe the birthing partner assumes that they will have to take a step back because the other one's traveling a lot. But the one that's traveling already knows, I want to be present in my child's life, so I'm going to take a step back. And I think that that person already knows that. It's so important to be intentional here. Really, really important. So for the last one, the sharing of the commitments, there are, I would say, a three-step process here in order to divide these in a way that's intentional and best. First, write a list and look at all the things that need to be done. It could be for the week, or just random things like not every week will your child have a doctor's appointment, but that should be something that can be considered on the list as well. So first, what do you enjoy or what are you skilled to do? Do you enjoy folding the laundry? Do you enjoy doing the dishes? Do you enjoy cooking? That may be something you want to own on the list of commitments. Skill to do so. Maybe you are incredibly skilled with math and you want to do the taxes for the family. Something like this. So these are things that it could be in which you decide to divide because of skills and or enjoy them. The next thing would be delegate. If you have a budget to do so, outsource what you don't want to do. If you have space for just one thing to be outsourced, and that's the thing that you guys really despise doing, both partners, outsource it. By all means, get rid of whatever you can, delegate. And then the last thing is what is left of the list, divide the rest. If you don't want to divide it 50-50, which a lot of couples don't, choose some things and then rotate. It really is up to you with what's left of it. But I would strongly encourage you to take a look at this regularly as things will shift, whether it's things that have to do with your career, your children, maybe even your health. You may realize that you need to discuss, and it's a great thing to kind of go back to the other episode that we had, which was talking about that time where you connect with each other. You may realize your child needs extra support. This is something that happened to us last year. We had to shift our schedules and be present to pick up our child in a way that was more intentional instead of having the babysitter do it because our child needed support at that time from the transition of the end of school to coming home. So it's really important to check regularly to see how things are going, whether it be your careers are a bit busier at a certain period of time, or maybe your health needs a bit of support and taking a step back in that way. All of these things need to have regular check-ins, and you need to be honest with each other to tell each other that you need a bit of additional support. And I think that this kind of communication and planning will allow you to foster that interdependent path because you're being intentional, you're being explicit, and that's really important for the lives that we live.
What you spoke about there on outsourcing, it reminds me of an episode from last year where it was a case of sometimes you just have to outsource. And yes, it's going to cost you financially, but the thing is, it will relieve you from the stress, the frustration, maybe a health issue, maybe a relationship issue, but it'll be worth it in the long run, where you just have to weigh it out that way. You mentioned there about living in a new country often means navigating different cultural norms around parenting, work, and gender roles. So how can our international parents here integrate the best of both their home and host cultures while negotiating independence and interdependence?
I love this question because it's really the beauty of the families that we've created. And it's, again, important to be intentional. We need to think about what customs, what rituals, holidays, traditions, etc., which ones are important to us. And we need to talk about this. My husband and I, we didn't do this until after the children were born and we're like really participating in a part of these cultural events and cultural moments. So what is important to you? What is important to your partner? This may be a lot. If you have 2 or 3 or 4 different cultures that are present, could some of them be turned into storytelling? Could others be a story before bed? What needs to be observed? What needs to be practiced? It's also important to consider what to celebrate from your host culture. Your children are a part of that and they deserve to be a part of that and celebrate that. But at the end, it's important not to overwhelm yourselves. You need to do what's best for your family And you know what that is. And so, like I said before, it could be something turns into storytelling. Another one could be reading a book before bed. It could be making a special dish together that has some kind of relevance to a specific holiday or custom or tradition, or it could be celebrating the special day. And I cannot stress enough, especially around certain times of year where there are multiple holidays, that you need to do what's best for your family. My husband and I have a very intentional talk around December, January, because it can be a lot. And we have reduced down to a way that works for us because if not, one, you can go broke, and two, your time is stretched so thin that you just are not able to live your life in a way that you want to, really. So, yes, be intentional about it. Make sure you talk about it and make sure you do what's best for your family. And you need to be clear and understand exactly what that is.
Yeah. And I mean, this time of year is a perfect example when we have St. Martin, again, kids going around, knocking around for sweets. And then shortly afterwards, Santa Claus arrives. So paper notion is thrown everywhere. And then the whole onslaught, 3 weeks of everything to do with paper noting and snoopyas. And then we enter into the Christmas season and into the new year. And it does get quite a lot. So I think
Yes.
it's important, as you say, to be part of the host, because especially with kids in school who are going to be learning about it and be aware of it within school. So it's obviously crucial for them and their third culture kids. But for most parents, especially in a new country without the family support, they end up shouldering the mental load. So, what strategies can you actually recommend to ensure that both partners actually feel seen and supported and equally responsible for the family and the home life? And I know we've previously spoken about talking and sharing the load. You mentioned earlier about saying what's needed. Is there key strategies that we should be aware of?
I like to keep it simple. So, I think strategy, if you want a strategy, it would be make sure you're talking to each other. Make sure you're communicating with each other and make sure you are actively listening. That would be my strategy because what I go to here, how are you seen and heard that you hold space to talk about anything with each other, in which you're able to say to your partner without feeling any fear of, I don't know, pushing back from your partner, something like this, or like, you have this already, or like any kind of argument. You need to be able to say to your partner, I need more support here, or I'm really struggling in this physical location. How can you help me? How can we help each other? So I truly believe that that weekly check-in that we spoke about earlier, where we regularly, I'm talking about put it on your calendar every week, same time, same day, and you talk to each other just for a small period of time, and that's your time to check in. As we live our very busy lives without support, as we live our lives in a different country in which we need to do it all on our own, and often with our jobs and our family, and we're a part of that too, individually, there are lots of things that will pull us in all different directions. And so it's really important that we make that commitment to each other. 5, 10, 15 minutes to where we have the space to talk about anything. And if this is done consistently, and you know what? Sometimes you're going to be on holiday, sometimes you're going to be away on a business trip. Those moments happen. But if it's done consistently, it's a good opportunity to speak to your values, your fears, your responsibilities, your boundaries, so much more. Gives you a chance to be seen and heard. And essentially, that becomes bonding time because you're giving that time to each other. You're promising this space to see and to hear what's going on, how you're doing. And I find that that's really important. So I like to keep it simple.
Which is the best way, obviously, especially if you're raising kids and you're busy enough as it is. So, one thing I want to end with was at the beginning there, you defined your way of saying what independence and what interdependence was. And I feel like a lot of people do find interdependence as a negative word because, oh, it's nearly just dependence. Like you've just added inter on top of it. So it's like, oh, I'm reliant, I'm dependent on someone else. But the way you spoke about it, the way you explained it, it sounds like it's a lot healthier. And the fact that you are together, as you say, in the dance, as it might be, and the fact that you're actually creating something together instead of just going in parallel lines. If a family wanted to start small, what would be some practical ways to build habits of interdependence between those shared calendars or the check-ins and the planned time together that will actually balance the parenting careers and personal time together?
Yeah, so this will depend from person to person because we all have, unique things about ourselves. So some will use a simple whiteboard and really just write everything down on that. Others will use apps like Cozy, family planning apps, to keep everything on the same in the same space. Some schedule appointments and invite each other via Google Calendar. Could be something like that. All of that is helpful. Yet, I would suggest the best way to build an interdependent life is to have that weekly partnership meeting and make sure. I want to say make sure, but it's lastly, it really comes down to having a babysitter at your disposal, so you can find that time, someone who's reliable and trustworthy, and they'll come in and out of your life from different times, and you'll need different people in different stages. But I think a great thing for the interdependent life is making sure that you remember that you are that partnership. And that babysitter can really help you with being able to find time, could be once a month, where you and your partner step away and actually be adults. It could just be sharing a meal together, but that's also connection time? So, interdependent life, one can say that that's a fancy way of saying that you depend on each other. But what I want to say is like you're collaborating as a team. And if you think of it as collaborating as a team, your independence brought you to where you are today. You met the love of your life. You started a family together. You live in a place that may or may not be home. But the beautiful life that we've chosen requires us to have intentional choices. And that's where the interdependence comes in. And that's where you need to be intentional. You need to make sure that you are being explicit and just showing up for each other. And I think that when you make intentional decisions, you really are showing up for each other in a way in which you allow yourself to have that successful and satisfying relationship.
Thank you, Angela, for joining us again. If there's one thing I'd like you to take away, it's this: interdependence is a healthy way of being parents to a growing family. And knowing that living abroad with your young family is challenging, yes, but it's also full of opportunities to create your own village, your support network, your safe spaces, and your routines that will help keep you grounded. And here's a well-known secret: you can't pour from an empty cup. Interdependence only works when both parents show up as their full selves. And that means carving out time for your own needs. Whether it's a walk in the park, a quick gym session, journaling, reading, or just a few quiet minutes with a coffee, giving yourself space and replenishing your cup is not indulgent, it's actually essential. When we nurture ourselves, we show up better for our partners, our kids, and our lives abroad. We gain perspective, patience, and the energy to handle the mental load that comes with parenting, with work, and with cultural adjustments. And it's not about being perfect, as we always say. It's about being grounded, connected, and intentional. So here's my invitation. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might be struggling, whether they've just moved to a new country, or navigating new parenthood, or just trying to find themselves in the middle of motherhood. You never know who might need a little reminder that they're not alone, and that building a village and finding balance is possible, even far from home. Remember, building a life abroad doesn't mean losing yourself. With awareness, effort, and a little creativity, we can create a village, a home, and a partnership that thrives, and that starts with taking care of ourselves. Thanks again to Angela from the Expat Parenting Collective for sharing her wisdom, and thanks to all of you for listening and for leaning in and for showing up for your families. Until next time, take care of yourselves, your partner, and your growing international villages.